everyone. My name is Irma Sanchez, and I am a literacy specialist at Vantage Learning. Before that, I was a teacher for 29 years and taught ESL, English as a Second Language. And that is what is going to be the focus for our video today. Best practices for English language learners. Now, in many parts of the country, you might use the term EL, English learner, or ELL, English language learner, MLL, multilingual learner, or LEP, limited English proficient. And like I said, when I was teaching, it would have been ESL, English as a second language. Now, many of the best practices that we're going to go over today would benefit any of your students, but I am going to particularly concentrate on best practices for English language learners. Now, I'm heading into my groups and assignments, and I'm going to click on assignments and show you how we can set up an assignment with the best practices in mind. So I'm going to click Add a Prompt, and I'm choosing an essay for today's video. And the essay that I'm choosing is Do Children Need Their Own Phones? Now, I've also looked up different best practices and research that have shown us that these different practices will work when teaching writing for English language learners. So one thing that is recommended is to definitely use prompts to give students a topic that they are going to write about. Now, another best practice is to integrate reading of various texts to expose students to different language patterns and structures that they can later emulate in their writing. So this particular prompt does have some sources, and students would be able to read these texts as they think about what their opinion is as far as do children need their own phones. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this little button, View Resources. When I click on that button, I scroll down and I'm able to see some of the resources that are available for my students. Now, in particular, for English language learners, the National Center on Improving Literacy recommends the use of graphic organizers. So as you can see right here, we've got cluster webs in case you think that that would be helpful for whatever writing assignment you're going to use. We've got Venn diagrams. So again, a variety of graphic organizers are available right here at your fingertips. Now, another best practice would be, it's called like a fill-in format, where possibly there's an outline that students can use for their writing. And we do have this persuasive outline that you could print out for your students, where they could actually write their first draft. And on the left side, it gives them guidance as far as we need an introduction, what's part of the introduction, what would be the first reason and details, second most important reason, conclusion, make sure to use transitional words. Now, that is another best practice that is recommended by the ESL Writer's Handbook that, again, help us with practices that would be helpful to students. Now, when we get to the student side, I'm going to show you that we have an electronic version of this that your students could also use. And finally, just as another guidance, we also want to use writer's models. So within our database, if a prompt is an IntelliMetric prompt, then we do have writer's models for you to refer to. These could also be turned on the student side, or you can turn them off on the student side. So this particular model is a 3. It's given us score point of 3. And right here is the sample piece of writing. And if I wanted to see a top essay and I click on a score point of 6 and I click go, I could also see that piece of writing, which would be an excellent example. Now, I also have the ability to print these models for my students. And again, this is something that is very helpful to our English language learners to be able to see an actual example of good writing. Now, finally, before we head on to the next step, you can also print this information. And sometimes kids just need to be able to see the prompt, look at the text that is part of the prompt. And so, again, you have printing capability right here from this part of your assignment step. I'm going to now click on Setup Availability. Now, if you have attended any of our training sessions, we talk about submissions and we recommend anywhere from 3 to 5. However, for an English language learner, we can choose a higher number. We might want to allow 10 submissions. So again, this is part of differentiation that you're able to do for your students through our program. Now, also with the National Center on Improving Literacy, they talk about grouping students. And we now have the ability within our program to actually assign to individual students or to a small group of students. And this is where you might want to pick some of your English language learners, and maybe you're bringing them in for tutoring, or maybe you're giving them the same assignment that you're giving the rest of your classes, but you are differentiating. And I'll show you all the different ways you can differentiate as you are making your choices in the assignment setup process. Now, when I click on Setup Scoring, we have a decision to make. We can either use a 4-point scale or a 6-point scale. That is strictly your call. In some states, people want to use the 4-point scale. Now, if you attend one of our training sessions, we might recommend the 6-point scale, only because you are giving students more feedback when you choose that scale of rubric. Now, when we click on Setup Feedback, we've got the write ahead. And this is probably one of the most important pieces of our program that really go step by step with the best practices. One best practice is to focus feedback on 1 or 2 specific skills at a time. So we are able to do that with Write Ahead. And keep in mind that Write Ahead is going to give personal, actionable, trait-specific feedback to students. And that feedback is helping them to revise. We want to build their confidence and we want to strengthen their writing skills. We have 3 choices available to us. We could either deliver feedback based on 2 lowest trait scores. We could deliver feedback based on all traits, which may be a little overwhelming for our English language learners, or we can choose to deliver feedback on selected traits only. So I'm able to decide that for this prompt, I just want feedback on content and development and organization. Now, another best practice is to be able to adjust expectations based on proficiency levels. And we have my editor that allows us right here. We could choose developing rule set, proficient rule set, which is our default, or advanced proficient rule set. And again, this is just another way to make sure that our program is able to adjust to different learners that you have in your classroom. Now we can also turn on the My Editor Suggestion Auto Insert, where it's giving students a replacement word. And we can enable feedback in multiple languages. And I'm not sure if you've ever noticed that. But again, being able to utilize assistive technology such as word spell check to help with editing and vocabulary is one of the best practices that research has indicated. And finally, we've got step 6, which is adding tools. Now, again, you can decide you're able to differentiate. And you'll see that we have our Venn diagram, our cluster webs, our graphic organizers. But another best practice for English language learners are checklists, which I'll show you an example of in just a minute. Also, text to speech. This is something where we can set up our program where it will read out loud the prompt, it'll read out loud the sources, the My Tutor, and the student writing. So I am now going to save and assign, and I am ready to head over to my student account, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. Now, when I sign in as a student, this is what you'll see. Now, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to log in as a student. This is something that we are able to do when we offer training sessions. Um, you can reach out to one of our literacy specialists. We can help you with that. But right off the bat, your students are able to click on resources. And once they click on resources, they're going to see videos that walk them through what is my access, how do I get to the assignment, and you'll see that we've also got them in Spanish. Now, I totally understand that you don't just have Spanish speaking students in your schools. You've got students that speak all different types of languages, but we are able to support the Spanish language here with these videos. Now, as we scroll down, we're going to see again a lot of those best practices. Again, planning and revising. We've got those graphic organizers right here for you. We've got the checklist that I told you that I would show you. So for example, the persuasive opinion checklist, these are really good checklists and are, again, another best practice for our English language learners where they can look at what they should have added in their essay and did they. They could say, I stated my opinion clearly. Well, that's a no, or I could improve it, or that's a definite yes. And we have these checklists and we have all of these graphic organizers within different genres. So depending on whether or not you give students something with a narrative, or they're going to write a persuasive, or they're going to write an informative, then we have these available for you. Also, another best practice, and this was from teaching writing to ELLs in the elementary classroom, is to have word banks. And you'll see that throughout research. Being able to click on word banks and look at adjectives and possibly look at adjectives that mean the same thing but are at a higher level. So we have what we call $quarter, $5, $50. So again, if you grow up maybe hearing Spanish throughout your young age and you head to school, there's a lot of these words that I may never have heard when I was growing up, but yet I can see that angry means furious, enraged, irate. Now here in the $50 column, you're going to see some asterisks, and that means that these words might be part of the SAT words when students are applying to colleges and taking tests. And so this is just really helpful in building their language. Now, again, we've got all of these resources. We're heading back to the menu, and now we're ready to get started on our assignment. Now, again, for today's purposes, we are using Do Children Need Their Own Phones? I'm going to click Resume. I'm going to click OK. And if you haven't had a chance to see the student account in action, you might not know that now we have a side-by-side view. And we did this because many educators were requesting that our view look more like the state test view. So I hope that you'll really like this new view where on the left side, we've got the prompt, we've got the sources, and we can even manipulate how big we want that writing space. We could even turn off the prompt and have the entire area for writing. The other thing that educators asked us for was a highlighting feature. And this is particularly helpful for English language learners. So again, one thing that I would want to make sure that my English language learners understand is what is it asking you to write about? So I can click on the highlighter and it's asking me, do you believe that children under the age of 12 should or should not have cell phones? And I can highlight that piece of information. I could read my articles. I could highlight the important information. So I think you'll really like being able to have this feature within the student side. Now, I told you that I would show you what those electronic downloadable outlines look like. I'm going to click on Writer's Toolbox and I'm going to open Create Persuasive Outline. And what I did here is I actually took one of the writer's models and I used it for this example. And so again, if you have your students write their first draft and then you have them add it here electronically, and of course, students might not finish typing, so I'm just going to put writing an essay, and they might run out of time. They just have to click Save and Close. It's going to save everything. They come back. They go back to Create Persuasive Outline, and again, everything is there. So I'm just going to delete this. That was just to show you that it's going to save everything that we have. Now, in teaching writing to ELLs in the elementary classroom, it also talked about native language support that possibly we would allow students to use their native language to brainstorm or maybe write their draft and then translate it and then put it into either a downloadable outline that you've printed out or this electronic downloadable outline that I have. Now, another feature that I think you will love is that we are letting kids know exactly what they should have in each of their body paragraphs. What I also think you're going to love is that these change. If you assign a narrative prompt, the downloadable outline would follow a narrative piece of writing, informative piece of writing, a literary piece of writing. Now I'm going to save and close. And when I click on the Writer's Toolbox, I go to Insert Persuasive Outline, and it turns my outline into that essay. Now I can just click Load. Are you sure? And it is now in my writing space. So again, another best practice, being able to write our drafts, possibly using our native language, translating that to English, and having our first draft. Now, another best practice, and keep in mind that I am in Google, I'm using Google Chrome, and I'm going to right click, I'm going to click Translate, and right up here, I'm going to click on these three little dots, choose another language, and look for Spanish right here. But look at all of these languages. As we discussed, we know that you've got a lot of students with different languages in your schools and not just Spanish. And so you could actually have students translate this information to their native language. We click Translate, and now you're going to see that the prompts, the articles, their writing, everything is now translated in Spanish. Now, why would we want to do that? We just want for students to be able to read what it's asking them to do and for them to have that understanding. And then once they have that understanding, then they can work on their draft and make sure that it's in English. So I am not asking you to let students write their essays in Spanish and submit them for scoring. That is not how it works, right? We want them to write in English. We want them to learn English. But this is just helpful just for them to be able to utilize their language just to understand what the prompt, what the articles are about, and to know what they need to do. So I am going to once again translate back to English. And now I'm going to demonstrate what that feedback would look like. Remember, we talked about personalized feedback. So let's say that you've got 30 students and they've all submitted 30 different essays. They are all going to get individualized feedback. I'm going to click Submit Writing, Submit for Score, and you'll see the score right here. The holistic score is 3.4. Most of the scores are in the 3.3 to 3.6 level. That means that we still have work to do, and we understood that when we saw our draft. We know that we still have work to do, and if I scroll down, you'll see that Right Ahead has already generated the feedback for the students. And again, this is individualized feedback. So another student sends in an essay, that feedback is going to be personalized for that student. I click right back up here on assignments. I click here Start Revision, click OK, and now I'm ready to generate that feedback on a side-by-side view by clicking Feedback, and look what it's doing. It is generating the feedback. Now, another best practice, I believe, in general for all students, not just English language learners, is to tell them what they are doing well. And in each of our traits, we are doing just that. We want them to know what we feel they are doing well. And then we start giving them revision strategies. And you'll notice that these revision strategies are also looking at their writing and commenting on their writing as far as what can be done to make that writing better, to revise and to grow within their writing capabilities. Now, what can we do once again? I can right click, I can translate, I can click right up here, I can go back to Spanish, and I just wanted to show you this feature. I think this is really important when we think about English language learners, and keeping in mind that this would translate to any of these languages that I'm scrolling through. So I click on Spanish, I click translate, and now look what it did. Not only did it translate, of course, my prompt and my articles and the writing that I have, but it also translated the Right Ahead feedback. Why is that important? Because I just want to know what it's telling me to do. If I can understand it in my native language, then I have a better chance of being able to take that information, utilize it, and then translate it to English, which is, of course, what we're trying to do. Make sure that our students are proficient in English writing. So let me go back to translate. And I head right over here. This time I'm coming back to English, and I'm going to show you one more thing. So we talked about a best practice as being also part of editing a piece of writing. So I just wanted to show you that when I click on My Editor, if you have turned on that feature in the assignment setup, maybe you've never noticed, and again, you may not be looking at a student account. I then, as a student, can click on Spanish, and then any of my mistakes, I can look at what it's telling me to do in Spanish. I can click in Korean, and I can look at any of my mistakes in my native language. So that is another differentiation that we offer for our English language learners. Now, every one of your students has a portfolio, an electronic portfolio, which is another best practice, which will house all of their writing. And their students have the ability to just click on that piece of writing, select View, Print, Save, and they're able to look at their writing, they're able to look at their scores, how many words are here. That would be important for some of our state tests that have word counts. And again, this is all at their fingertips. Now I'm going to take you back to the teacher account because I want to show you a couple of things that we can do on our end as well. So I'm going back, signing in. This time I'm going into my portfolio, and I have a portfolio just like my students have a portfolio. Now, right here, I also have the ability of putting a little check mark. I have the ability of doing all kinds of different things, but for today's purposes, I wanted to show you that I can also view print save, but I can also generate a parent letter. And so when I was teaching, communicating with parents was crucial. And as the ESL teacher, a lot of my parents didn't speak English or, couldn't read English. And so what is so nice about this feature is that I can just click right here and I can click Spanish and it immediately translates it in Spanish. And that way we can have the doors of communication open for our parents as well and give them their communication as far as the writing progress in their own language. But again, we're not just talking about Spanish. I could actually click on Korean and it's going to translate it to Korean because again, we understand that many of you have students that speak multi languages in your schools. Now, I'm going to close out of here and show you one last feature. So I have the ability in my teacher portfolio to click on feedback. And as I scroll down, it's also generating the feedback that it gave that student for that particular submission. So if I revise and I have another essay and I submit that second essay, the revision, the feedback is going to change. Now, what I can do, which I believe would be a fantastic best practice, I can close that out, and I have the ability to print this. I can either click print, or I could even save it as a PDF if I wanted to just email it to one of my students. And so right here, I could print out the revision strategies that are being recommended for each of my students. And this could serve as another type of checklist where they are checking off that they did indeed work on their introduction and they use some of the revision strategies. They're working on their focus and purpose and working on the revision strategies. So again, just all kinds of things that we really want to support you with writing, support your English language learners. And if you have any questions or you would like a training session or you would like to be able to utilize a demo student account, please reach out to us. We are here. We are available to you. We want you to be successful and for your students to be successful. So I would just like to thank you so much for the time that you've given us today. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the day.